Alrighty, so I am here with the Chicago Bears with the first pick. Um, Very simple and easy because, of course, we traded away Justin Fields. Um, Knew it would come eventually, but obviously, as many other Bears fans, we felt that this team could have excelled really well with Justin Fields, especially with the additions of DeAndre Swift and Keenan Allen. But at the end of the day, business is business. So with the first pick of the 2024 draft, we will be selecting the best overall prospect in the draft with Caleb Williams, quarterback from USC.
Alrighty. That's definitely the pick that everybody's known for months on end. So that one was a given. This next one could be a bit of a toss up because of it does seem like it's going to be QB for Washington also. There's some debate here between May, Daniels, maybe even McCarthy. But I feel like, you don't want to just pick QB just because the school they went to, but they're coming off just having a UNC quarterback. So they may be a little bit hesitant to take May because of that. And I do think Jaden Daniels is a little bit more exciting just because of the stuff that he can do. So I think they may lean towards Jaden Daniels at number 2.
Alrighty, so with the third pick, this is an interesting spot because this is the New England Patriots. They traded away Mac Jones to the Jaguars, so obviously they are going QB. I would assume that they're going to go QB with this pick. If I was the New England Patriots, I would go QB. Um, I don't think McCarthy rises this high, even though he is getting a lot of hype before the draft. But I think at number 3, the Patriots just take the best quarterback available, and that is Drake May.
I,
Although Marvin Harrison is available, but I still think that they get their franchise QB. Hopefully, their franchise QB. That's what they thought with Mac Jones, but I think they might get it with Drake May. So Drake May, number 3 to the Patriots.
yeah, I do think that makes sense just because the quarterback you have on the roster, it's kind of hard to spend an entire year just sitting back with essentially a backup QB after you had a terrible year at quarterback last year too. Just people don't want to sit through that again and again. So I think they just kind of have to take a quarterback no matter who's on the board. The Cardinals, do you think this is a good spot to go ahead and do the trade that seems fairly obvious?
Yeah, I think this is a spot where we could see a potential first trade in the draft.
Okay. Like I'm not
What is
I'm not sure how
what is the
many
trade?
or trades what it's going to be, but we're going to have the Vikings move up to hurry up and try and take a QB before they're off the board. If I can find the Vikings, that is, there they are. I'm not too sure on the compensation, so I'm just going to kind of force it through just because this is a one round draft.
Alrighty, so now the Chargers are on the clock. The Chargers are in a very unique situation, in my opinion, just because where I think this could be how it is, where potentially 3 to 4 QBs go in the first 4 picks. Now you're the Chargers and Harbaugh and everything, and it's like, what direction do we go? Because you have Marvin Harrison available, you have Joe Alt available, and you also have the guy from Penn State available to where you go offensive line. But you also have Brock Bowers, who I think is going to have a very good career in the NFL, just the way he's built. He's a very good end. Um, but this is just something where they could go in any direction. Um, but I think, in my opinion, what Harbaugh wants to do in his first year is run the football, just like how he was in Michigan. So I think that's the mentality he'll have with the offense. So I think what he'll do is take Joe Alt, the best offensive line prospect for this draft. So the Chargers will go with Bolt at number 5.
Yeah, they did lose their wide receivers, but I do think taking a big time tackle is a hardball kind of move. The Giants are probably pretty happy with this situation. They need wide receiver help, and then it really just comes down to which wide receiver. Some people seem to think Neighbors might be better than Marvin Harrison. That's kind of a toss up, but for the most part, the general thought is that Marvin Harrison is better, so we're going to go with Marvin Harrison Jr. to the New York Giants.
Ready? Alrighty, so now we have the Tennessee Titans on the board. This is just a team that is just, in my opinion, is a mess. Um, Derrick Henry going to the Ravens, and now you're just like, what do we do? Um, I think with their young QB that they have, I think they go offensive line here and take the guy, Fashanu. His name wrong. I apologize, but we take Fashanu from Penn State just to shore up that offensive line because they need help. So,
And the Atlanta Falcons now have a new QB, Kirk Cousins. So they have some things to look forward to there, and now they want to start building upon that. And they have a chance to, at pick 8, to take the top defensive player in the draft. And they're going to go ahead and do that because it's also a position of need, and they're just going to go ahead and take Dallas Turner, the edge out of Alabama.
alrighty. So now we are back with the Chicago Bears. So at number 9 with the Chicago Bears, this is a spot where I'm, as a Bears fan, I'm like, what do we do at this situation? Because you have a plethora of players that are could be available. So on with this draft that we're doing, you have Malik Neighbors, Romeo Dunze, and then you have Jared Verse and Latu from UCLA, all available for you. And you're like, well, what do we do? So you take Caleb at 1, and in my opinion, at 9 we go receiver, but we don't take Neighbors. We take Romeo Dunze because I think Romeo Dunze will be better than Malik Neighbors, and I just like Dunze a lot. I think along with Keenan Allen and DJ Moore, like that's a great core for Caleb to have. Um, and Rome being young and coming in, he can learn from Keenan Allen and DJ Moore because they're veterans on the team. So I like this pick with Rome at number 9. If Dallas Turner was available, I would have said Dallas Turner. Um, but with a Dunze there, I think we take a Dunze. Personally, that's just me. Um, but I think that is probably 2 top 10 picks from one team, probably the best ones that you could think of in a while for a team that has 2 picks in the top 10.
Yeah, definitely the most recent one would have been the Texans last year taking Stroud and Will Anderson, but that's definitely up there. You have to be excited about that. And the New York Jets are on the clock. And I think this is going to be one of those interesting situations, especially with how the draft has been laid out. I think they're going to want an offensive weapon for Aaron Rodgers. They do have a number 1 wide receiver in Garrett Wilson already, but adding Malik Neighbors could be really good. But I also think Aaron Rodgers has benefited from having some real good tight ends. And I feel like Brock Bowers is the best tight end in quite a while, probably since Kyle Pitts, and he may be even better. So I'm going to go ahead and go with Brock Bowers instead of a wide receiver to the New York Jets.
I actually like that pick because I think they need a tight end. Not that their tight end that they have is, not bad or anything. Just adding that to be like a safe blanket for Aaron Rodgers will help. So I do like that pick a lot. So we're at the Arizona Cardinals at number 11. And if you're the Cardinals, I think you're pretty happy with this guy falling to you. Just take Malik Neighbors to help you out with Kyler Murray. Um, yeah, I think Malik Neighbors will help him out because you did lose Hollywood Brown.
Right, so the Denver Broncos are on the clock at 12. They may have liked some of these QBs to slip a bit, but that's not what happened, and it may be a little bit of a reach at 12 to take the fifth QB off the board. Maybe, maybe not. But I think, they may be content to take a QB early in the second round, possibly. So I think they're going to go ahead and take one of the best players on the board right now. Is the edge from UCLA, Latu, to add to that defense.
Alrighty, so the Oakland Raiders are on the clock with the 13th pick in the draft. Um, so this is a interesting and unique situation, in my opinion, because this is another team too where they would have thought that the top quarterbacks would have slipped to them, and it would have been nice. However, I still think that this pick is going to be a reach, just because of their current QB situation. They lose Jimmy G to free agency, and you're left with Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew, who are not bad QBs at all. However, with the weapons that they have in Devontae Adams and a Michael Mayer and a Jacoby Myers, we have seen plenty of reach picks in draft history. And this is another reach pick that I think has potential to boom, especially with the new coach that they have in. Everyone likes him. So I think this is a great start for this new coach to take a young QB and build around him, and boom. So, with the 13th pick, the Las Vegas Raiders will take Michael Penix from Washington.
And there we go. Boom. You know, I feel like the Broncos are kind of a team that may want to sit back and wait, even though their QB situation's horrible. But they may want to kind of build up a roster a bit. And the Raiders they don't shy away from reaching on players in the draft, especially in the first round. So they go ahead and make that move. And now the Saints are on the clock. I think this one's a fairly easy one. They need O-line pretty badly. So they just go ahead and take the best one off the board from Oregon State.
Alrighty. So now we are with the Indianapolis Colts. So I actually like this Colts team because of Andy
All right.
Richardson. I think he would have had a very strong case of winning Offensive Rookie of the Year if he hadn't gotten hurt. So I do like him a lot. I think this team is good, but can definitely get some help, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, on the offensive side of the ball too. They could use a receiver, but I think at this pick, you go defense and you take one of the two best players that are available. But I think if I was the Colts, I would take Jared Verse from Florida State.
Alrighty. Now this situation here could be a little bit spicy for the Seahawks just because it's almost like there's some luxury picks on the board for them. Not quite sure if they'll go for those though. They do need O-line help, and I think it could be found in a number of ways. But I think they're going to go ahead and take the center of the future guy close to home and take Jackson Powers Johnson at 16.
Wow, did not expect that.
Mm-hmm.
But so the Jacksonville Jaguars, I think this is just an easy one. I think they take the best available player, and they take Terrion Arnold, cornerback from Alabama. Um, he's the best available player, and he slipped to them. I just think it's good for them to take. So there's nothing wrong, especially to shore up a defense. and then to have that secondary beefed up too with that division. Um, because of the Texans being on the rise, and they just added Stephon Diggs. So definitely need to throw up that secondary to deal with the Texans.
Yeah, that's definitely a steal at pick 17, I would say. And now the Bengals are on the clock. A few different ways they could go here because I have a few different needs that are also towards the top of the draft right here. They could go ahead and shore up a wide receiver due to T. Higgins can't really be around much longer. But I think they'll go ahead and shore up the O line first just because the injuries that Joe Burrow has had over the last few years. And they'll take the one from Georgia, actually, over Fatanu. Amarius Mims.
Okay. Okay. Well, so the Rams. This is a team that really hit the wall, in my opinion, once they won the Super Bowl. They did have Aaron Donald retire, gonna go down as one of the greatest defensive players in history. His track record speaks for itself. So they could try and find his replacement, but it'll be very hard because of how his career was. Matthew Stafford ain't going to play for very much longer, but there's no reason for them to take a QB because they did take Stetson Bennett. So there's really no point in taking another QB. This also would be a very, very big reach. So in my opinion, you could go two ways. You can either go defense or you can shore up the O line because there's nothing wrong with shoring up your own line. But um, with Sean McVay, it's very hard to tell what he wants to do because he's an offensive minded guy, so you might want offense. But, there's really no wide receivers there. I mean, Brian Thomas is available. I don't think he's really necessary to be drafted by the Rams. So I think the Rams will just take the safe pick and do Fatanu at 19.
All right, we're going on a bit of a run on offensive linemen, and that run is going to continue. As a Steelers fan, Mims is the guy that I want, but I think he's starting to rise up. I could see him go even higher than 18. So naturally, that'll lead to some other linemen slipping a bit, and I think the Steelers kind of like to take SEC linemen, and there is one available, so I think they take J.C. Latham here at 20.
Nice. Solid pick. Solid pick. Um, so the Miami Dolphins. This team is very, very interesting. Um, but I think with who's available, I could see them um getting a guy to go along with Ramsey. That Ramsey could teach under him, and kind of get guidance and could potentially be a good corner, because I think Ramsey is one of the best, if not the best corner in the league. Still is, even though he is up there in age and everything. Um, but with the Dolphins, they take Quinion Mitchell from Toledo to learn under Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah, I think that is a very good pick for the Dolphins. It kind of puts me in a little bit of a pickle now because that would have been my pick for the Eagles. But let's go ahead and look at this. I think, they still are going to want corner in this situation. So I think they just kind of look right down their board, move down one spot, and go ahead and take the next best corner, who is going to be Nate Wiggins out of Clemson.
Alrighty, so now we are back with the Arizona Cardinals. So this pick was from the Minnesota Vikings, with that trade that they made earlier. So this is their second of three picks in the first round. So really, you could go any direction here and probably have your second option available for you at 27 with the Cardinals. At 11, we took Malik Neighbors, so we don't really need another receiver, even though another receiver to have would be nice for Kyler Murray, just because their receiver room is not great. Um, so I think we just do, and you take Brian Thomas from LSU. So you get both the LSU guys on the same team with Kyler Murray.
I'm really glad you made that pick because that's what I was thinking the entire time, that you can get two LSU wide receivers for Kyler Murray, and they tend to have a history of working out pretty well. So now Dallas is on the
Mhm.
clock. They need O line. It's kind of a little bit of a glaring need for them, and also, there's a drop off in their run game because Pollard is now gone too. So I think they're going to get a guy who's pretty versatile on the offensive line. He's been getting a lot of hype recently, which is Graham Barton out of Duke. They're saying that he can pretty much play any position on the offensive line. We'll see how true that is, but that is who the Cowboys take at 24.
Good pick. We know Dallas's history with O-line, having some good ones in recent history. So there, hopefully he can stir up and be one of the great O-lines to be drafted by the Cowboys. So at 25, we have the Green Bay Packers. So it looks like they need help on the offensive line as well. However, with the defensive players that are available at your disposal for the Green Bay Packers, you have to be excited and actually happy because you can go anywhere from Johnny Newton to Chop Robinson to Kool-Aid McKinstry. All very valuable picks. Even though you don't really need a defensive tackle in the edge, you need more of the corner and the safety. Um, but I think, in my opinion, they go on the defensive line route because I think this guy has potential to be really good. We watched him play against us this season in college football. I'm going to take Chop Robinson for the Green Bay Packers. I just like him a lot. I think he can be really good, and I think that he can add pressure for the Green Bay Packers who want to compete for that NFC North division against the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, that's one of those players that's kind of surprising that it takes them this long to get drafted. And the Buccaneers are on the clock. They probably would have liked to take Chop Robinson there, but they do have some options. I'm going to go ahead and look at the defense, most notably. Let's see here. They do need an edge, but they also need a corner. And I do think corner is a little bit better right now than edge on the draft board. So I think they're going to go ahead and go with Kool-Aid McKinstry out of Alabama.
Good pick. And we're back with the Arizona Cardinals. I'm basically doing the Arizona Cardinals draft. This is great. Um, so the first two picks, they took the wide receivers, both from LSU, which is great picks. So now let's go on the defensive side of the ball and just take one of the two best defensive lines in the draft, defensive tackle specifically. You got Johnny Newton, Byron Murphy. I think both can be really good. I liked both of them in college. But I think the guy that has the more upside between the two is Byron Murphy. So we're going to go with Byron Murphy from Texas.
Nice. The Cardinals are having a phenomenal draft right now, having two star wide receivers and possibly the best defensive tackle. And now the Bills are on the clock, and there's a very glaring need right now for the Bills, considering they've lost their starting one and two wide receivers. So I think that's what they have to go for, and now it comes down to which wide receiver really, and there is a few options available. But I think the best one for them is going to be Adonai Mitchell out of Texas.
That is a good pick. That is kind of obvious, especially with losing Stephon Diggs. So definitely a good receiver to get to hopefully replace him. So the Detroit Lions, this team was a surprise last year. Um, really had a really good year. So really, with whatever they do, they're going to probably be very successful when they get drafted. Um, I do think that they could use some defensive help. Um, so I think they just take the best defensive guy and get their team need at defensive tackle and take Johnny Newton from Illinois.
All right, that's a good pick. The Ravens have a few different needs here, and I do think, their needs aren't necessarily huge, and there is some players a little bit down the line that they could maybe take later. So I think this is actually going to be a trade out spot for the Ravens, and it's going to be to a team we talked about a while ago, and that's going to be with the Denver Broncos. Not sure exactly what the compensation is going to be, so we're going to just click on whatever. Actually, they don't have a pick till 76, so maybe we're not doing that. And the Ravens stay put. So now, they have a few different needs. It may be a slight reach because they need offensive guard, but they could go ahead and take a wide receiver. And I think they're going to go for some speed and go with Xavier Worthy.
Good pick, good pick. Another wideout for Lamar Jackson to throw to. Now we have the San Francisco 49ers, who lost to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Um, no matter, it just seems like no matter who the Niners draft, they're always going to turn out to be very good. I think what they do is add a offensive line because of their offensive star power with Christian McCaffrey back there and the versatility of Deebo Samuel to run the ball. So I think they take Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma.
All right, and the Super Bowl champions, Kansas City Chiefs, are on the clock. And I think I'm going to take a pick that may surprise you a little bit, because I'm going to go a decent bit down the draft board for wide receiver, and they're actually going to take Xavier Legette out of South Carolina, and that'll finish the draft, of the first round of the draft. What are your thoughts on this first round?
Um, the Leggett was definitely the shocker, in my opinion, from what you chose. I thought you would have taken Keon Coleman, just because I think he's obviously I don't know much of Leggett, so there could be some noise about him that I'm not knowing. But I just think that Keon Coleman is definitely one of the better receivers after obviously Mitchell, buddy. So I would have, if I was in the Chiefs and I was in that position to pick, I would have taken Coleman. But they definitely need a receiver, especially with the whole Rasheed Rice situation going on. So
Yeah. I think maybe the most controversial pick, really the back to back picks, would be Denver, who opted to not take a QB, even though they need one pretty badly. And then the Raiders just go ahead and do it and take Michael Penix. But, you know, teams need a QB, but taking, the fifth QB at number 12 is a little bit dicey. And I feel like they may want to just build a team, but I could easily see them just go for it and take a QB. And the Raiders are obviously in a very similar situation. But given the division that the Broncos are in, as well as the Raiders, I feel like maybe they just want to sit back and build up a team again before they go ahead and take a QB, and maybe have a chance at taking a better one in the next year or so.
Yeah, I went with Penix at 13 with the Raiders just because I don't know what the QB draft class is going to be next year. It's definitely going to be down from what we have this year unless people just come out of nowhere, boom, and like just take college football by storm that we just don't know about. So I feel like with the Raiders, you kind of, and especially with nobody really available in free agency, I just think that they just shoot the dice and take Penix just because, even if later rounds, he may not even be there. Same with Bo Nix. Like, Bo Nix may not even be there anymore whenever they pick later rounds. So I think they just shoot the dice and take Penix. I think with their skills position, obviously they lost Josh Jacobs, but Zamir White is not a bad running back. You do have Devontae Adams, who's one of the best, if not the best receiver in the NFL. So he does have someone that he can throw to as a number one. And I just, like I said, with that new coach coming in, I think he brings a lot of energy. And I think this team is happy with who they have at coach. They're not going to take the NFL by storm, but this is definitely a step forward. That coaching hire was a step forward for this Raiders team for their future. So I think just looking for their future to be successful, that's why I think they just go ahead and take Penix at 13 just because of the uncertainty of quarterbacks that would be there and between the later rounds and especially when you go into next year.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I think if the draft for us went some pretty interesting ways. Four QBs in a row may shock some people, but I think, the Patriots are kind of a team that could go either way. And I think once that third QB is off the board, I think the Vikings just get a little bit eager to move up. Say, just hurry up and do what they can to move up because, other teams may be looking at moving up too and taking that QB. And, Arizona, that they're probably going to want some kind of offensive weapon, and they probably feel comfortable moving back to 11. And some other picks, there's a bit of a run on O line between 16 and 20. I think that is fairly likely just because there's so many O line. Kind of, they're just that. That's just how good they are. They're kind of within that range to pick them. There's quite a bit of O line in this draft, really, that's solid. A lot of offensive linemen went off the board in round one, and also quite a few wide receivers as well. So, overall, I think we did a pretty good first round draft. I think most teams should be fairly happy. I think the Cardinals, especially, should be happy, and the Bears, because when you have multiple picks in the first round, you should be happy regardless. But I think they also did really well with those picks, too.
Yeah, I think with this draft too, it's kind of like this drafts where you have just a plethora of a position, a plethora of players that are in a position, whether that be QB, receiver, O-line, whatever it may be, that are just there. And that's why so many go early because they're all good. And it's always a safe pick of taking an O-line, especially if you have a younger quarterback. The Bengals, for instance, Joe Burrow's injury history, definitely want to take an O-line and shore that up. But, there's just a plethora of guys in those two positions, the receivers and the O-line. I mean, you saw the Cardinals go wide receiver at 11 and 23, both guys from LSU. Like, it's just one of those drafts where you have a plethora of players in a particular position who are good and can make a difference at the next level that to where teams just take them and, so many go in the first round. So I think it's one of those drafts. Uh, so yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. And that will finish off our first round of the NFL draft.